The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.
With so many people living longer, the fear of outliving your money becomes a reality for many of us. Will I be a financial burden? Will I outlive my money? How will I be remembered? My name is Neil Himmelstein, president of Main Street Planning Group. Please contact me by visiting mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. I will introduce you to strategies that will guarantee you will not outlive your money, that can guarantee you will not be a burden on your loved ones. Through a collaborative approach, we will uncover solutions that offer tax-efficient strategies, lifetime income, and legacy planning, choice, organization, direction, and education. That is the code we stand behind. Contact mainstreetplanninggroup.com. That's mainstreetplanninggroup.com, or call 631-647-4694. And listen to me every Friday at 3 p.m. as I host the Main Street Code for Financial Success, right here on 103.9 LI News Radio. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. And if you need to reach me, I can be reached at 631-647-4694 or themainstreetcode.com. You can reach me at themainstreetcode.com and check out my website and find all kinds of information. You know, when we talk about code, we talk about choice, organization, direction, and education, and we help hundreds of advisors across the United States with life insurance, long-term care, and planning needs, and annuities, and guaranteed income for life, and all these different things. And the word code, when I talk about choice, organization, direction, and education, those are initials, the code, C-O-D-E. And today we have a special guest, and her name is Caroll Golden. Caroll, say hello.
Good morning.
And Caroll wrote a book called How Not to Tear Your Family Apart. And Caroll, this was fantastic. And Caroll, I know Caroll because Caroll is very accomplished in the area of long-term care. And this book, Caroll is dedicated, much of her life, and she put together this extended and long-term care planning thing for NAFA across the United States, the Limited and Extended Care Planning Center, as well as putting together a conference for intercompany conference across the United States, huge conference on long-term care. She's a true expert, a true mentor to me. And Caroll, I want to talk about your book, How Not to Tear Your Family Apart. And after reading it, I may change the words of choice, organization, into direction, and education, which is what you talk about in your book, which is my code, and change that C word to communication. So tell me about the importance of communication in a family, in these multi-generational families, which is something you go over in your book in great detail. Tell me how important that is and why today it's more important than ever.
Well, Neil, I think everyone will agree that relationships where communication suffers usually results in a very tension-filled, difficult relationship, no matter what level it's at. And naturally, sometimes a person who is expecting to be or is a caregiver in a family, they don't want to say anything because they sound like they're complaining about taking care of someone that they love. And by the same token, all of us are so busy with our own lives that we may not notice the burden of caregiving on the caregiver. It also means the recipient may be the one to notice, and that can lead to guilt. They realize what this is doing to a single person. Now, it doesn't matter how we define family. Some people have had friends their entire life, since second grade or college, and they have a close relationship with that person. And so sometimes they will actually turn to that person and say, I don't think I really understand how to best handle the care for someone I really care about.
So the big relationship that you form in your book, which I think is part of many of us have dealt with, is that caregiver. Okay, not only do they have to do planning, and all of a sudden they may have to leave their job or not take a promotion in order to do things that are helping out their parent, but also it affects their family, the third generation, in that they may be suffering an income, putting out their own money, okay, for that care, and then sacrificing their future and needing their care down the road. Because one of the things that this leads into is not only taking care of that other person and making sure their assets are okay, and not only their assets and organizing them, but also watching after your own family and making sure that a plan is put in place for them should they need care, because that caregiver themselves, all of a sudden, as you point out in your book, loses sleep, is doing 3 jobs at once, and to just go into that a little bit deeper.
Well, what I found was most families now are no longer just 2, even 3 generations. It's getting to be very common that there are 4 generations involved. And as you point out, having any kind of emotional or financial situation at any of those generational levels affects all of them. I mean, actually in the book, it was a Gen Xer who went to his dad and said, "Dad, Mom really looks exhausted, and what's going on?" And of course, the father says, it's kind of a taboo topic. We don't want to upset Grandma and Grandpa by talking about it. But there is a financial situation as well as the emotional situation. So for those people who are caregivers, and let's say they just cut back on work, well, chances are that's going to affect their own retirement.
Correct.
Because obviously it will have a financial impact. Never mind if they're actually having to withdraw money. And, what if the stock market, it's an unfriendly time to be withdrawing money. Things are down and so on and so forth. All of that comes into play because this is real time when somebody needs care. Now, if you have a plan and you've worked it out with your advisor, say someone like Neil, then Neil knows that you know and he knows that he can invest in a certain way because having a sudden withdrawal has been taken off the table because you have a plan in place.
Correct.
And I think no matter what generation it is, it's going to affect the person needing care, the one giving care, and every other generation that, what if you want to create a legacy and you worked years with your planning and then something happens?
Yeah, and it's going to happen. And the odds are, and we talk about this all the time when it comes to long-term care and custodial care. Listen, at my age, I'm 63, I used to carry 2 5-gallon jugs of water last year to the top of my stairs for my water cooler. But now I carry 1. Now that may sound like a little thing, but you know what? Physically, I'm not as strong as I was maybe a year ago. But
it's telling, isn't it?
Okay, 10 years from now, who knows? Maybe I won't be able to carry 1 up the stairs. But maybe I'm just not pushing myself as much. I don't know. But obviously, our physical bodies break down somewhat even as we age, and our mental breaks down somewhat as we age, correct?
Even though that's the natural progression of things and people really do, let's say you're taking care, congrats, Neil, you're still taking a gallon jug up the stairs.
5 gallons. 5 gallons.
5 gallons,
yeah.
Sorry, instead of a 10. But the fact is you're doing something. But longevity is real. And longevity means that maybe our bodies were not designed for us to actually live to 100 in a robust state. And that's just a fact. And as you said, you start to notice it yourself. Sometimes even in your 50s, where you used to do a 10K, now all of a sudden, the next day you can hardly move.
Right.
So I think longevity is a reality, which again relates back to the fact that we are generationally living longer. And it's a wonderful thought.
Right.
But
we have to prepare for it. And that's the big thing. And when we get back from the break, we're going to talk about preparing for it. You're listening to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. And I have with me Caroll Golden, CLTC, CHFC, LTCP, CASL, FLM, CLAC, LACP. She's got lots of accreditations. And I'm your host, Neil Himmelstein. And we're going to be back in just a minute to talk further about this topic. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody, to the Main Street Code for Financial Success. Hope you're having a beautiful Friday. It's a pretty day, a little chilly here on Long Island. We have with us Caroll Golden. Caroll just wrote a book called How Not to Tear Your Family Apart. It is on Amazon Books, and I hope that you can pick up a copy. And before the break, Caroll and I were talking about this intergenerational planning we're talking about and how the impact on caregivers, just financially and emotionally, it is taking care of your parent and having to take care of your next generation or even maybe two generations, So part of the C in code is not just choice and options, but communication with your family. But now we have a planning crisis for not just grandma and grandpa, but for the parents who now are saving for their retirement and have to protect their retirement as part of the retirement plan for their longevity. Do you know where I'm going, Caroll?
I do, because let's just say in the book, this family, they managed to find a non-insurance option because the grandparents need to have a plan. And so they solve that. And then they look at themselves and they go, wow, I don't think I want the kids or anybody to be caught in that kind of a situation again. And then they look and they start to really look at what does it cost in retirement for healthcare, just healthcare, for Medicare. How much will Medicare have to go into our budget? And going back to what you said, Neil, not only choice and communication, organization, but the direction to get better educated so that you understand what are my options? How, if I work with Neil, can I actually protect what I've already told him is important to me? And so I've worked hard for that. I don't want all of this to blow up because, let's say I really need care for a while, or my spouse winds up with a health issue. It drains our savings to the point where I'm not having the lifestyle that I envisioned for myself. My spouse is feeling guilty. The kids are all upset. So, Neil, you're right. Education, going to someone like yourself and saying, so now that we're talking planning, how many options do I have? My grandparents didn't have too many because they waited too long to actually sit down and at least have the conversation with the advisor about what are my options? How can I really protect myself, my family, all the generations, so that everything I've built towards doesn't simply blow up because I'm lucky enough to live way longer than I might have thought.
All right. Terrific. Thank you, Caroll. And one thing I want to supplement your book with is you talk about putting a care guide together. I mean, Caroll goes from soup to nuts about putting a care guide together, getting the family communication together, and maybe it's not all on you, but divvying up duties between maybe your kids, maybe your brother or sister, maybe they're out of town, not out of town. Starting that communication with your family. But the one supplement I want to add to this is not only planning for yourself, but if you're planning for your parents, seek outside help. Now, you can reach us at Main Street Planning Group, and we can help put the right people together for you if you're dealing with grandparents' issues. You may have to organize their finances. They may be in the market. And I have to tell you, everybody, and I've been talking about this for 6 months now, interest rates are way up, okay? Inflation is up. We all know it. All the forecasters saying recession, 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 but you don't have to suffer that because you can buy annuities now at a very high interest rate that are saved or fixed income through guaranteed income for the rest of your life. The rates are up now that's going to keep you up with inflation and also take down that risk of that market going up and down, which it looks like we're going to have a lot of volatility now. And that everything I said a year ago is happening now. Interest rates are going way up. So why are you sitting in either 0 or 1% accounts in the bank? Or conversely, why are you still playing in the market if all of a sudden, or your grandfather or grandma or grandma are in the market when they should be worrying about fixed income and taking some money back so they don't have a catastrophic situation where they have to take a big withdrawal out of an IRA or something, which is going to create a tax and all other kinds of problems.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Neil, because one of the misconceptions about planning for longevity is people think it's an asset situation. Well, I'll have to cash in this asset or sell at the wrong time. But actually, there's two parts to it. And the other one is just what you said, income. So if you have prepared, as Neil is suggesting, that you have a steady, guaranteed source of income that you can depend on, you're not going to get caught into a situation of where it's going to impact your asset.
Correct.
So when it comes to long-term care, it's very important to remember, excuse me, it's not just an asset issue of having an asset depleted. It's an income issue. That is a lifestyle issue for every generation. It doesn't matter which one. So just remember that what Neil is suggesting here is that you protect your asset by protecting your income. And healthcare is expensive, as we all know.
Right.
And certainly extended care is just more expensive. So,
it's funny. I have a really good client who moved to Florida. They're from New York. And she has type 1 diabetes. She's had it for over 50 years. She's actually written books on it. And her long-term care, she's been thinking about long-term care for a long time. Very, very, very bright person, thought about it. And her long-term care plan has always been, she's bought houses and rented them out. And her long-term care plan before speaking to me was, if I ever go into a long-term care situation where I have to be, knowing she has type 1 diabetes and watches her health every day, if I have to go into that type of situation, my plan is to sell a house. Well,
Uh-oh.
this is her plan before she met me. So she built up assets. She bought a house. She bought a second one. She's renting them out. But it's not so easy to sell a house when you have to. So, it's one of the recommendations I made was to open up. So her house that she lives in is completely paid for. Her husband's there. Is to have a home equity line on her own house in case she needs it, so that she doesn't have to sell any of her properties. This was one of my many recommendations that I have in front of her.
It's a good recommendation.
And she opened up a home equity line so that if she has an emergency situation, she's not using the money. She has it there on the sideline for her to access if she needs it. Just a simple thing like that is part of the planning. Or if you're planning for your parents or grandparents, sometimes their house is paid for and it's loaded with equity, especially if you live here on Long Island, where the minimum house is right now $500,000. A lot of these houses are paid for and people have no income and there's liquidity in the house. And sometimes you want to tap into that liquidity in case you need it for later. Just a thing that we talk about on some other shows and stuff. And you can also use some of that liquidity to buy an income for yourself or to buy some sort of long-term care or legacy insurance to protect that house for the multiple kids. It's just an amazing legacy tool that people have these assets, and you need to know how to properly organize them and how to coordinate them for your long-term care and for your parents' long-term care. Listen, this has been a great conversation. Caroll, I always love talking to you, and I always appreciate your knowledge and wisdom. And if you want Caroll's book on Amazon, it's called How Not to Tear Your Family Apart, written by Caroll Golden. And Caroll, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thank you so much for having me, Neil.
Right. And again, if you want to reach out to me, 631-647-4694 or visit me at themainstreetcode.com. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great weekend.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of this station, JVC Broadcasting Management, or its sponsors.